Hi, my name is Jeff Belzer with Ventura Mako Surf Camps. I've been an ocean lifeguard for over 10 years. What I'm going to teach you today is about rip currents and jetties. Rip currents are a reaction or a response to the water of the breaking waves that flow up along the seashore and flow out to the sea. Just like a river flows down a mountain, a rip current is going to meander and flow to the path of least resistance towards inshore holes. Okay? What's really dangerous about a rip current is that once you get involved in one or you're caught in one, is that water is probably going to get deeper. Okay? So if you've got someone who's comfortable in waist deep water and they get pushed down towards an inshore hole, they could be overhead and being pulled out. Waves could be breaking on the outside coming over them, giving them a feeling of an undertow when really that wave is just breaking over their head. What the jetty is, simply put, is these rocks are used to fix and hold sand to keep the sand from filling up in the harbor. Okay? We want it for the benefit of the boats to have access to the harbor. They need to keep the channels deep. As these longshore currents want to pull sand down towards the harbor, what this jetty is created here to do is to trap the sand. And you can see right here how there's this big pocket of sand right up along the beach, just holding that sand, preventing it from going that way towards the harbor where they've got deeper water. The three things you should remember when you get knocked into the water is, number one, don't panic. Be aware. Remember that you saw this TV show, okay? What you can do then is swim lateral away from the jetty towards the beach. Okay, so some of the common hazards we see are rip currents flowing along the jetty, inshore holes by the jetty, and people getting knocked off of the jetty. Okay? Commonly, a longshore current is going to go into the jetty where you're going to have a rip current. Now, because the longshore current's coming at that jetty, it's going to be pulling sand and sediment out with that rip current, which is just like a river. Okay, it's going to be creating a hole right there. So someone's able to stand, they're able to stand, they're able to stand until they get right next to the jetty. And by that time, it's not only is it too late, but now they're in a hole. So you've got multiple issues that they're dealing with, and they can very instantly get into a panic and not know what to do. The most dangerous thing is to try to pull themselves onto the jetty. What they should be doing is swimming laterally, sideways, away from it, back towards that sand, and using the surf to get pushed back on the sandbar from where they came. If they try to get onto that jetty, what can very easily happen is another wave can push them, they can get knocked unconscious, they can get thrown into a hole, which does. I have seen this happen where they get thrown into a hole and they've just got multiple cuts all over their body, abrasions, scrapes. There's muscles, and these rocks are sharp. They're really sharp. They're constantly getting eroded by the sea. So it's very dangerous. Another one of the worst ones is when you've got someone in dry clothes. Either they're going out there to fish or going out to see the view and look around and get that feeling of being out in the ocean, to look back at the landscape of the beach. And what happens is they're in dark clothes, they've got their back to the ocean, and all of a sudden a wave will come in, and it was on its way the whole time. It's on a 15, 20-minute interval. And what will happen is it just has to either get their knees, their waist, or just take them over. They can then fall into the ocean. That's one of the worst case scenarios, because you've got someone who's got fully clothed, which is drenched in water, which is weighing them down. Jackets, pants, shoes, everything. And they weren't ready to go swimming. They might be a good swimmer, but anyone would go into a form of shock right off the bat because they weren't prepared for it. So now all of a sudden they're in a situation where they're trying to self-rescue. Okay? If you've got lifeguards on the beach or lifeguards get called on scene, you know, it could be a late rescue. So they're coming out, and that rescuer is also in danger. The one thing I want everyone to know about jetties is just to stay off of them. The number one thing you should do if you get knocked off a jetty is to swim away from the jetty into the surf line where it'll wash you back into the beach. More people in the world don't know how to swim than do. If you don't know how to swim, take lessons. Okay, so right over here, we've got kids playing at Marina Park. And if you notice, the beach is wider than the jetty walls, okay? What happens is the waves come in and the water is gonna pocket up. As the set comes in, all that water gets pushed up, okay? When it wants to flow out, it's gonna wait for a lull. As that lull happens, you've got more energy, and where these kids are playing, all that water, you can see there's almost waves going back out to sea, could very easily pull them out. They're in waist deep water, pull them into the impact zone, which is impacting right into rocks. When you're in the water swimming, wading, maybe you're only confident being knee or waist deep, it's still important that longshore current and rip currents can still pull you around. okay? If you're going onto a jetty and you get knocked off, the first thing you want to do is don't panic. Take a deep breath, swim away from the jetty, let the waves wash you to shore. Don't panic, brace yourself for the breaking waves and use the ocean's energy to beach yourself. Anywhere where there's wet rocks, that's potential for a whole wave to come over your head and pull you into the water. It might look like little splashes now, but you don't know. I mean, the tide's rising, the swell could be building, you just don't know. And you can see there's lots of wet rocks here. Look at right there how when the water comes up, it appears to be like a nice little pool that you would fall into, but as the water recedes, you can see there's just big, thick, gnarly rocks. Here comes some water now. So it looks like a pool, like if you did fall off that rock, that you'd fall into it, but there's a good chance that the water could recede and you could fall into a hole right there. You can get pushed back in deeper by more oncoming waves. So looking right here, you can see the waves are breaking straight across and they're kind of bending out and coming at the jetty. That's because of all this flow in this pocket, and this rip current is really pulling the water out to sea. And it's gonna get a good hard pull right after this wave passes. There isn't one readily available to conquer that rip current just flowing right out. That's a great feeder. See how it's just seeping off the sand and feeding right along, just right along the side of the jetty. So with this jetty here, if you get pulled out into a rip current this way, what it can do is it could wrap you around to the other side of that jetty. People can't see you from the beach. Rescuers, people wouldn't even know you were there, and those oncoming waves would be pushing you into the jetty, okay? Now jetty's like no place to escape because that can easily knock you unconscious, put you in a hole in the jetty, or you can drown. Okay, what you'd want to do is you'd want to swim away from that jetty and swim in with these oncoming waves over here. And this spot is super dangerous because check it out. So you do what we've told you and you start swimming in, but look at that wall of rocks over there. If you don't come in this narrow little slit of sand, you could have a very difficult time getting to the beach. Even great surfers have a tough time dealing with these rocks and have told me that some of their worst experiences of trying to get out of a lineup coming against these rocks. So as you can see, the waves are splashing up on the rocks, but those are nothing in comparison to these rogue waves that can come up 10 feet over this jetty and just tackle it. Powerful enough to take a 200-pound man right off the rocks. Yeah, the number one thing is safety. I know it's a great view from out here, but if you're not with the group, if there's not lifeguards around, don't be out here. And if you're gonna come out here for a view, check with the lifeguards. One of the pastimes when people like to fish is they like to drink. If you combine alcohol with any activity, it equals danger. If you're on a jetty and and someone's a slight bit intoxicated, that just only increases their chance for a wave to knock them into the jetty, disorientate them, and they could drown. In that state of consciousness, if they're not ready and they don't have their wits about them, you've got a very small chance of survival being knocked into the water. Not a good idea. Just don't do it. There was a rescue, one of these jetties down the way, where there was a man and his family, and he had his baby and his kids, and his child was on a boogie board. Longshore current was taking him towards the jetty, and as I'm going out to rescue, they notice that the child's getting pulled out, or that there's something wrong because the lifeguard's coming out. Well, he's a real tall guy, about 6 foot, but there's a huge inshore hole right next to the jetty that I know about, which is one of the reasons I'm going out to help his other son. He's got a baby in his arms. So it's real important, never attempt to rescue someone else if you're not ready for it, and especially if you've got a baby or small child with you. On my way out, I told the gentleman just to walk straight in. If I hadn't been there, I mean, who knows what could have happened. Be aware of your family, be aware of your kids, where they're at, what they're doing. That's one of the number one things actually is you got too many parents that come to the beach and just kind of, aren't watching their kids, Even if there's lifeguards on the beach, keep an eye on them, Pay attention to where they're at and what they're doing. It's really important to teach your kids how to swim. They aren't going to learn to swim if they don't have swimming lessons, and it's necessary and it'll save their life. For the Surf and River Report, this is Jeff Belzer at Marina Park with Ventura Maco Surf Camps. For more information, you can reach us at www.venturasurfcamp.com. See you at the beach.